Morning!
Morning guys, morning YouTube. What up?
So, we want to bring the competition prep thing or contest prep thing to an end somewhat. We'll still talk about some things that are competition related.
Can I just stop you a second and... how pale I am next to you. It's actually like it's paining me.
Everyone watching this has been used to seeing you browner than me for like the last 3 videos.
Yeah, no, I need to get that bronze.
I'm back! We're going on holiday tomorrow though, so Dan might have a tan.
That's a whole nother blog though.
Vlog.
Vlog.
Right, so we wanted to talk about the reality of comp prep. So this might be a little bit, I don't know, is it going to be deep? But I'm not gonna hold back.
It's just basically, we're talking to you right now. In a second we're gonna cut it and we're gonna get Dom to talk and then we're gonna get me to talk and we're gonna give our own perceptions on how we found prep this time. Obviously Dom didn't prep, but Dom was with me throughout my prep. So I'm gonna talk about how I felt how I felt my actions were and my moods and things like that, and then Dom's gonna basically record a video after me.
Yeah, so we're basically just going to give you both sides of the coin of prep. So, from an internal and external point of view.
Yeah, the only time I've seen this is the Paul Scarborough prep document series, and yeah, I could relate to that because like he was like, I'm fine, but his wife were like, I want to kill him. So
I have said I will not hold back on this video, so I'll do my best to just say everything that I can about the whole prep experience. I do think it's really important, especially if you're watching this and you have a partner or somebody who competes in your life, it might be helpful for you to see my point of view. Obviously it's quite beneficial that I have had previous competitive experience, so I can sort of relate to how Dan was behaving during prep. And for people who haven't had that, you might find it a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of things you just simply won't get because you're not in that situation or you've not been in it. I think that's one of the main reasons I actually did find it quite difficult, however, was because when I prepped, especially for my second year, I was very relaxed as opposed to my first year when I was a psycho and I starved, and I thought prep must have to be the hardest thing in the world because everybody says it's so hard. And then the second year, my actual aim for prep was to be healthy, to feel healthy, and I said to Josh, who's my coach, I will not prep. I will cut this prep if at any point I feel unhealthy or I'm overly stressed. So I just made it a focus to be really laid back, and I took everything like in a very good way when I prepped, so you wouldn't really notice any difference. So when Dan actually came to prep and he was very anal, restrictive, obsessive, regimental, all I actually thought was get a grip. Like, it doesn't need to be this hard, like you're choosing to make it this hard. And it's hard for me to see that as well because he's a coach and he's constantly telling people to chill out and he's constantly saying like it's not that big of a deal. But then when he was actually doing it, he behaved worse than his clients. So I was like, practice what you preach, basically. There was a point in prep when I actually turned around to him and said he was killing himself training, and it was about 2 weeks out, and I could see him getting worse and worse, and his mood was getting more irritable. So I knew he was stressed, I knew his body was under stress. Obviously, I'm a coach. I know, I do know that he shouldn't be doing that. So my actual words were, would you tell any of your clients to do this? And he said no. So I said, well, why are you doing it to yourself then? So even though as a coach, you have all this knowledge and you know what's right and what's wrong, when it comes to you seem to throw all the rules out of the window. And I think everyone's the same. Everybody who coaches or personal trains, you sort of think you're exempt to your own rules, and it's not. Practice what you preach. I think everybody's guilty of that. I'm guilty of that. But yeah, so before prep, let's go before prep. Before prep, Dan was very, very relaxed about everything. Diet, training, we'd train whenever. Training was always fun. It was structured to an extent, but if we wanted to go into the gym and do a session, we might just wing it and just do a really hard session. Sometimes we take it a little bit easier, things like that. And we'd always train at different gyms, different times. When it came to prep, Dan had to train at 2 p.m. every day, had to have his pre-workout meal at a certain time, post-workout meal at a certain time, where for me, that I just didn't get that, because when I prepped, I was like, as long as I'm training hard, getting my calories in, getting my pre and post workout meals in the right order, I'm doing enough. Doesn't matter. If I miss a cardio session, I'll make up for it in steps. I'll do it the next day. Doesn't matter. Dan was very much like, this has to be done, this has to be done, this has to be done. And that's probably where the biggest strain came in, because we were so used to training together all the time. We basically was in each other's pockets for months and months and months before that, since we met. So if I, obviously being a personal trainer, doing one-to-one, working online, being generally busy with life, I couldn't always make a training session at 2 p.m. And then even when I could make a training session at 2 p.m, I didn't always want to train with him, because it was so boring and anal, and it was so serious, and I was just like, and he would have a paddy if he didn't hit a PB, or he would spit his dummy out if he couldn't get motivated for a session. And for me, that's hard to be around that. It's hard to be around somebody who's beating themselves up so much. And there's only so many times you can be like, come on, it's fine. Like, if you know me, I'm pretty straight to the point, I'm pretty direct. So I actually would just be like, get a grip. Like, get a grip, for God's sake. It's not that hard. So yeah. The actual biggest difficulty for me was the emotional detachment. So when you're dieting and you're prepping and you become really tunnel vision, you sort of detach yourself emotionally from pretty much everything else in your life, and that becomes just your sole focus, and nothing else matters, and you magnify this one day on stage, and everything else just becomes like secondary. And that's how I felt. I felt like I was a choice instead of a priority. And if you know us, then you'll know how Dan was with me, or is with me. And then when we were in prep, I just felt like that wasn't the same. And we're obviously strong, we communicate quite well. There was just those phases where we didn't communicate at all. There was times I had to go home because I literally couldn't cope being around that negativity. And I honestly just couldn't be arsed with it. And I just thought, like, you'll wake up and you'll realise, like, how much of a dick you're being, basically. And he did, and in retrospect he does, but I don't think he understands truly how hard work he actually was. So yeah, I think if you're in a relationship with somebody who's competing, you just need to take a step back and just realise that they are in that bubble and they will come out of it. But yeah, so I think a lot of people get caught up in thinking that prep needs to be the hardest thing in the world, and Dan was one of them, and it didn't need to be that hard. He put a lot of pressure on himself to set an example and to be the best, to set an example to clients, to set an example to other people and to himself, and maybe even to me. And I know that if he'd have just relaxed, it would have been far easier. And it's so hard to see somebody so confident as well, because Dan was always very, very confident, didn't really care, be so hard on themselves. And to an extent you can sympathise, but then, like I said earlier, I just thought, like, shut up, like, you look amazing. People would pay to look like you, people would kill to look like you, and you're stood there in the mirror saying, oh, I'm fat, I'm watery. And like, he was shredded. So he was just super hard on himself. And obviously, when people are in prep, all they ever do is walk past mirrors and look at themselves. And I've never seen anybody look at themselves so often in the mirror. So I was like, what the hell? You don't, like, this isn't you. And yeah, it was just really hard to get used to him being so anal and obsessive about food and training and everything else when he'd gone from being so relaxed. And I don't even think he realised how bad he was until afterwards. So obviously now, in retrospect, like, we sat down towards the end of prep and we set loads of goals together, and we had loads of things to work on, and we spoke about this in our post-competition video. If you set goals and you have things to work on post-show, it really helps you to stop you from feeling lost. So I think that's a good thing that we did that, because he was very, very wrapped up in himself. So there was times where I thought, I have reeled Dan back for like a day, so I'm going to take full advantage of this, because like 80% of the time I just felt like I was just like, I actually cannot deal with this. So yeah, Obviously now everything's like normal. We've spoke about it since, and Dan has obviously made the decision that he would not do it again for the simple fact that our relationship means more than stepping on stage. So I think if you are prepping, you just need to think logically and literally. At the end of the day, all you're doing is getting leaner, and it doesn't need to be obsessive. You don't need to leave a trail of hurt behind. You don't need to sacrifice relationships, sabotage your job, sabotage friendships, just to get lean and get on stage, because at the end of the day, nobody really gives a shit but you. And that's what it boils down to. And it's just, you've got to put it into context, like the bigger picture. And also remember that everything you're doing is a choice. And that was my biggest thing when I prepped. I didn't want to inflict myself on anybody else. So I didn't want to affect my relationships, my friendships, my work, because it was my choice. It was my choice to get on stage. Nobody cared if I did it, and nobody was affected if I didn't. So if I wanted to do it, I was gonna make sure that I didn't affect anybody else but me. So if you are prepping or you're in that situation, just remind the person that is prepping, or remind yourself that everything you're doing is a choice, and at the end of the day, it is just a stage. You don't need to throw away your life just to get into condition, to get on stage and let strangers judge your body. Like, that's all you're doing. If you want to get up there, showcase your hard work, by all means do it, but just don't sacrifice everything to do that. So I think that's realistic enough. I think I've said everything I need to say, but hopefully Dan will touch on a little bit more than me as well.